Final Vendetta is a brand new side-scrolling belt brawler from British duo Bitmap Bureau, creators of the well-received Battle Axe and Xenocrisis. According to the developers, it was created as both a passion project and also to fill a giant gap in the Neo Geo's library, with there being barely any beat-em-ups available on the platform, let alone any good ones. Unlike lots of other modern brawlers, Final Vendetta isn't trying to reinvent the wheel or break new ground in the genre. It was inspired by classic 90s games like Final Fight and Streets of Rage, and it's a love letter to the stone-washed, acid house-infused 80s and 90s. It's unabashedly old school, and if you can't get enough of no-nonsense, white-knuckled pixel art beat-em-ups, then this game was created specifically for you. Although it bears a similar name to Konami's 1991 game Vendetta, which in itself was a sequel to 1989's Crime Fighters, Final Vendetta isn't a sequel or related in any way. It's simply paying tribute to a style of game that was once king of the arcades. It doesn't just look like something from the 16-bit era. The Neo Geo was the lead development platform, and yes, it will be getting a physical cartridge release sometime after it ships on modern consoles. If you weren't aware, this is what Bitmap Bureau specialises in. They develop games for old hardware, squeezing every last bit of performance out of them, and what they've achieved here is no exception. Not only does it look, sound and play extremely well, but the fact that it's bound by the limitations of hardware that's over 30 years old is mind-blowing. Unfortunately, unlike Xenocrisis, which had both a Mega Drive and Neo Geo port, this game is too big to run on the Mega Drive's less powerful hardware. Although, a port hasn't been ruled out as a possibility, you just might be waiting a while. Along with being an homage to classic beat-em-ups, the game's aesthetic is also a faithful recreation of the distinctive art style of SNK games from the 90s, with beautifully detailed pixel art and incredible animation. The game looks absolutely fantastic in motion, and it really has to be seen on a large screen to be fully appreciated. If you're watching this on a phone, trust me, it looks even better on a monitor or a TV. There's a basic CRT filter and the options to enhance the presentation further if you don't own a tube, but wish you did. Now, an area that many modern beat-em-ups don't get right is the music. Being a Streets of Rage fan, this, in my opinion, is something that can separate a good game from a great one. Final Vendetta absolutely nails this. This is easily my favourite beat-em-up soundtrack after Streets of Rage, and the best gaming soundtrack I've heard in a long while. I'm guessing it won't hit the audio G-spot in the same way for everyone, but if you like your OG drum and bass, techno, house and rave music, you're gonna love the shit out of this. It's an original soundtrack that includes music by Featurecast and Utah Saints. The Street Fighter III Third Strike soundtrack was apparently a big influence, and Final Vendetta's soundtrack is easily a high point of an already impressive package. Okay, so enough about the presentation. Let's talk about what it's like to play, because this game doesn't just talk the talk. Final Vendetta is set up like a typical brawler. You choose from one of 3 archetypes and battle from the left of the screen to the right across 6 stages, with each area ending in a boss battle. Like other games of the era it's emulating, the story here is extremely light. Someone's sister has been kidnapped by the notorious Syndicate gang, that's Syndicate gang, and it's up to you to do what any rational person would in that situation, which is to take to the streets and beat the living shit out of anything that moves to get her back. There's a brief introduction when you fire up the game, but otherwise it's up to your fist to do the talking. If you were hoping for a more substantial narrative, then I'm sorry, but you've come to the wrong genre. When it comes to gameplay, all your genre tropes are here. There are items in the environment you can interact with, such as weapons, health pickups, and things to destroy. There's an elevator stage, a train stage, and a nightclub. There are a decent number of enemy types, each with their own unique attacks to learn, and the further you get in the game, some of the boss characters make a repeat appearance. What I think stands out the most is just how authentic it feels to play. Yeah, all the typical brawler ingredients are here, but that doesn't always translate into champagne gameplay. Final Vendetta is the real deal though. I don't just say that lightly either. I'm pretty fussy when it comes to these types of games. For me, the combat has to be simple enough that your average gamer can pick it up, and deep enough that you can still discover new things after multiple playthroughs. This is what makes games like Streets of Rage 4 and Alien vs Predator some of the finest examples of the genre. Now, I'm going to admit something that probably won't go down well with many beat-em-up enthusiasts, and that is, I've never been a big fan of Final Fight. I know it's an important game in the genre, it was a huge step up from what had come before, and it undoubtedly shaped many if not all of the games that would follow. But compared to what came after, I think the combat is kind of basic, and I also don't love the sprite work. For example, Hager's posture has always looked bizarre to me. While I'm being completely honest, I didn't like River City Girls, Mother Russia Bleeds, or Scott Pilgrim for similar reasons. Again, they all have the right ingredients, but ultimately lack the depth and freedom in their combat to be anything more than average games. Final Vendetta understands the easy to pick up but difficult to master philosophy. The controls are pretty simple and each character doesn't have an exhaustive list of moves. There isn't a combo system as such, but you can link certain moves together and juggle enemies in the air. This freedom encourages creativity and experimentation, and every time I play it I discover something new. I'm sure there'll be some insane high-level playthroughs hitting YouTube not long after launch when people figure out how to properly break the game. While it is easy to pick up, this is not an easy game, and button mashing will only get you so far. Described by the developers as a thinking man's beat 'em up, you'll need to sink some time into it to figure out where the useful pickups are, how to chain moves together, and the finer points of crowd control. If you play on the default setting, which is hard, you'll be lucky to make it past the first boss without learning some basic strategies. There's no continues either. You can find an extra life in each level, and trust me, you're going to need them because you only start with 5. Playing it on easy gives you a couple of extra lives and fewer enemies to deal with, but they're still not pushovers, and making it to the credits is far from a cakewalk. There's 2-player local co-op, so you and your BFF can hit the mean streets together. This doesn't make the game harder either, so if you're looking for an easier way to beat the game on the high difficulties, this is the ticket. I would have loved a 3-player option, but I'm guessing this is beyond the capability of the Neo Geo. Currently it's local play only, but the developer has said that they are looking into online as an option, and this could come as a future update, obviously for modern systems only. Okay, so my nose is pretty brown at this point, but I do have a couple of complaints. The first is that the arcade mode is on the short side. There are only 6 stages and it's possible to beat it in about 30 minutes. Again, this is probably due to what will fit on a Neo Geo cartridge, but 1 or 2 more stages would have been ideal. The boss fights are a little underwhelming too. For the most part they're entertaining enough, they're just not on par with some of my favourite games in the genre. Like any good brawler, there are reasons to play through it more than once. There are high scores to beat, hidden stuff to find in each stage, as well as things to unlock. By default, you only have access to the arcade mode, but by finishing it with different characters and on harder difficulties, there's a survival mode, boss rush, a training mode, and an ultra difficulty to unlock. There is a versus mode too, which is thankfully unlocked by default. Admittedly, these extra modes won't be for everybody, but they do add a bit more substance to the game, and all of them can be played with 2 players, which is kind of neat. So if it wasn't already obvious, I think that Final Vendetta is an excellent game. There's a few retro-style beat-em-ups coming out this year, and Bitmap Bureau have set the bar incredibly high with this one. It's not going to suit people after a bit of chill, casual fun, but if you're into old-school coin-op brawlers, this is an absolute must-play. Final Vendetta is available on June 17th on all major platforms. No word on the Neo Geo release yet other than it's definitely coming, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that one if you're lucky enough to own original hardware. If you like this video, there's a button for that, and if you didn't, there's a button for that too. If you want to stay up to date with all my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification too. If you want to support the channel and find out more about how I make these videos, you can check out my Patreon. Otherwise, thanks for your time.